again, and welcome to another episode of Jake's Psychopinion Sideshow. These episodes are to discuss things that we didn't get to discuss in detail in our other episodes, our full-length episodes. These will be usually recorded probably myself, if not with the maybe another crew member or co-host who felt like they didn't get to explain something enough that they would like to. So this one here is connected to our cannibalism episode. This is the second installment of Jake's Psychopinion Sideshow that is connected to our cannibalism episode. There was just so much material there. And this one is going to be a tough one and probably a little bit of a lengthy one because what we're discussing here is Cannibal Holocaust. And the reason we really didn't get to discuss that too much in the other episode is that there's just so much backstory to Cannibal Holocaust, behind the scenes, in the scenes, what was going on with the director, the actors. The making of this movie is truly as terrifying as the movie itself. This is a cult classic movie. Most of, or a lot of, not most of, but quite a few horror fans that I've met over the years, and discussing horror with them, they always are like, oh, well, have you seen Cannibal Holocaust? Kind of, it's a very shocking film, and usually people kind of, I think, enjoy that about it. There's always that group of people that love the cult classics, and this is definitely one of them. So anyway, I want to get into it now because it may be a little bit lengthy. So what we're talking about is Cannibal Holocaust. Came out in 1980, and it was directed by Ruggero Deodato, and Italian film director. And this movie was the second highest grossing film in Japan in 1983, behind only E.T. the Extraterrestrial in 1982. So that's kind of interesting. Kind of some weird things going on in Japan, I guess, in the 80s. So this film caused a lot of scandal, in Italy especially, at the time of the release. 10 days after premiering in Milan, the film was seized by the courts, and the director, Ruggero Deodato, was arrested and charged with obscenity. He was later charged with murder and faced life in prison, and the belief that several of the actors were murdered for the camera. Deodato contacted Luca Barbarici and told him to contact the three actors who played the missing film team. So I might be getting a little bit ahead of myself here. Going over my notes here, I need to give you some description of this movie. So I recently rewatched this movie, and what it is that there was a film crew that was known for doing very raw documentary type films. So they go into the jungle to do this type of thing, and there's some tribes there. Ancient tribes been there for hundreds and maybe thousands of years. I don't know. They've been there a long fucking time. So these guys, they go down there and they are making their video, and somewhere along the way, they start to kind of lose their shit themselves. They become just as crazy or savage as any tribe could be. There's a lot of graphic scenes. There's one scene where, they pull a giant turtle out of the water and cut him up with a machete and pull out his insides and all of that stuff. And, that's definitely one of the scandalous things about this movie, and we'll get to why that is. But there's a scene where they find a tribal woman, and they proceed to sexually assault her, and they just do all this crazy stuff. When they actually get to one of the tribe's village, they gather everybody up and set the huts on fire, and they kill a pig that was meant for eating. They shoot it. Then they're just brutal. So anyway, um, what happens is that crew went in, and the whole movie is about this professor who actually goes in to find that original crew because they went missing. So the professor goes in there, and he's got a couple people with him, and they just go about the whole thing completely differently, and they kind of befriend the tribes when they get down there to where the other members had disappeared. So when the professor and them get there, they end up, long story short, finding the remains of the original crew, and they find all of the footage that was filmed before that crew had been murdered. So the professor takes the footage back to New York, and him and the producers of the documentary that was going to be made, they kind of all start watching these videos, and the professor is opposed to using any of the footage when he sees how brutal the people were when they went in there with the sexual assault and the murdering of animals in graphic ways, and abusing and hurting tribes people and burning villages, and it was just madness. So the whole point of the movie, and we'll kind of probably touch on that more towards the end of this, is that it's kind of it's sort of a art piece, kind of depicting who really is evil. Who really are the savages? Is it the tribes people, or is it us? And I think that's what they were really getting at. And Ruggiero Deodato had a really interesting way about going about this. So we'll get into some of that. And during this whole ordeal, the reason that Ruggiero Deodato was actually arrested, I believe, was because he pulled the same really, really amazing marketing technique that Blair Witch did. Some movies had done this where they kind of convinced the audience that these things really happened, that this was something that actually happened, that, these people were missing. The actors that were supposedly killed, they weren't allowed to make any public appearances about the movie because the director was really trying to drive home that this could have happened. Which, like I said, is reminiscent of Blair Witch. When Blair Witch came out, the internet was very fresh and really kind of in its beginning stages of social media and all that, and website was built and everything, and people really went there thinking that there's people that were abducted or murdered by a witch, and that's the same case with Cannibal Holocaust. So I have to give anybody who came up with that idea, I have to give them kind of props, because that's just brilliant. You're always going to make people curious when they think something's real. They're going to want to see it and weigh in on it and experience that. So anyway, as we get going here, so he contacted the people and the actors, and he got them to show up, and he presented the actors alive and well to the courts, and the murder charges were dropped. The film remained banned in Italy for another 3 years. And this movie was so crazy, because watching this, even when I was watching this, I kind of was like, what is real and what is not? And it goes back and forth, kind of, in my opinion, with the effects being very almost non-existent. I remember at one scene there was a tribesman who was shot, and he just fell backwards into the water. There wasn't even a wound or anything, and it was very kind of fake looking. And then there's other parts where they're eating parts of a human being, and it really, the props look kind of rubbery to me and a little unrealistic. But then there's the animal killings of the movie, which were very real, and we're going to get into more to that. That was a lot of the problem with this movie for a lot of people. And if this movie was made today, there would be, all hell would break loose, and the director would, I don't even know what would happen, and you'll see what I mean as we go. So the animal slaughterings in the movie were real, which ultimately resulted in the movies being banned in its native Italy. After the snuff film rumors were proved false, the killed animals were referred to as a muskrat in the film. It was a turtle. It was actually a very large turtle that they fished out of the water. A snake, a tarantula, a spider monkey, which, from what I read in other articles, the spider monkey scene had to be shot twice, so I believe 2 spider monkeys were killed and a baby pig. And the film documentary Last Road to Hell, which features several executions consistent of authentic footage supposedly from Nigeria and Southeast Asia. So in the movie Cannibal Holocaust, they show other footage that the team had shot in some of their earlier documentaries, and that footage is questionable as to whether it was real or not. So says Diodato was inspired to make the movie after seeing his son watching the violent news on TV and noticed how the journalists focus on the violence. He also believed that some news angles were actually staged to capture more sensational footage, hence the similar angle seen in the film. This movie has gained the title of the most notorious movie of all time and is often claimed to be banned in over 50 countries worldwide. If true, it would easily hold the world record for the most heavily banned film. Like I said, this is a hard watch, so if you're listening to this and you're curious about it, I don't know. I've heard that there's different versions available. Some have edited some of the animal killings and some of the brutality, and some just go for it. So I don't know. If you're interested, if you have a weak stomach or you can't really handle those kind of things, I'd just say stay away from it. That'd be my advice. Diodato wanted a scene in which the natives fed an enemy tribesman to piranhas, but he didn't have a working underwater camera. Only still shots of that scene exist. I think there was a lot of footage as well, and that's probably part of it that didn't even make the film, and I think that stuff was probably just as disgusting as the rest of it. The iconic image for the film shows a cannibal girl impaled on a stick. Upon being summoned to court in order to assert that no actors were harmed during production, Diodato explained that the girl simply sat on a bicycle seat attached to the pole's base while holding a small pointed balsa wood piece in her mouth. The fake blood was then added. Diodato commented that the girl had unusually calm temperament to be able to remain so still during the filming. Thank God that part's fake, because there's a part where there is a woman and there is a pole going from anus to mouth, out the mouth, bloody. And that one, it didn't look as fake as some of the other stuff. So thank God that, this guy wasn't crazy enough to actually murder tribespeople during this. According to a 2005 interview with Carl Gabriel York, Alan Yates in the movie, York said that when rehearsing for the sex scene with Francesca Ciardi, I believe is her name, Ciardi, who was played by Faye Daniels, she suggested that the two go out in the middle of the jungle and actually do it. York declined, stating that he was with somebody back in New York. As a result, Ciardi was very upset with him during the entire shoot. There was a sex scene with two of the main characters, two of the people that went in that ended up getting killed. They were like having sex, I think, in one of the burnt down huts that they had started fire to. Like I said, this shit just kind of went off the rails. When you get towards the end of the movie, you're just like, man, these people are crazy. So if you see it, that sex scene right there, I guess she wanted to rehearse that a little bit on the side. And the other actor did not, Alan Yates did not think that was a good idea. So when Carl Gabriel York, Alan Yates, arrived in the Amazon for shooting, he wasn't given a script or an idea of what the movie was about. As soon as he arrived, director Ruggero Deodato shouted, "That's my star, get him into makeup." Almost immediately, the first scene they shot was the amputation of one of the character's legs. York later, in an interview, said while staying there in the jungle, he didn't know whether this film was a Hollywood production or simply a snuff film. So even the actors were left a little bit in the dark. I think Ruggero really had this idea in his head of what he was going to do, and the actors didn't even really know what was going on the whole time. So as I mentioned earlier, there was a scene where there was a pig that was shot, and immediately after a pig was shot and killed in the movie, York botched a long monologue Diodato very much wanted to be included in the movie. After rehearsing the line several times and doing fine, York says he screwed up during filming because he heard the pig squeal and die. Really die, by the way. That, as I said earlier, the pig actually died. Retakes weren't possible because they had no access to any more pigs, which they would only use to shoot and kill. Bummer. I guess they just didn't have enough animals around to torture and kill. Originally, Diodato had a fake monkey head with the fake brains in it to have the natives eat instead of actually killing and eating a monkey. The natives talked him out of it, however, as monkey brains were a delicacy to them, so they were looking for a free meal. And I'm sure they were happy when they had to shoot that twice. I mean, and as a side note, I can say that it's almost a good thing that the tribes people were eating these animals or whatever, because, I mean, at least it wasn't in vain, but at the same time, when you record things like that, you wonder how much dignity there really is. Little side note that doesn't really matter, but it's in my notes. The pistol used by Robert Kerman in the movie was a Smith & Wesson 32. Ruggiero Diodato actually was in the movie himself. He played a small cameo. He's a man sitting on a blanket outside of the New York University. Sitting on a blanket out there. Let's see. Though uncaring towards the nature of his film during shooting, Ruggiero now regrets everything he did, mostly the actual animal killings. He said once that he wishes now that he'd never made the movie. But there is a lot more to this, and if you look at other articles, Ruggiero, he was treating everybody in the movie like shit. I mean, he was pulling people aside and screaming at them and yelling at them, and I believe there was a part where the main actress that I mentioned earlier, she had a problem with something, and he took her off the side and screaming at her Italian and shit. And it's just amazing to me how some of these movies, it reminds me of The Shining, how, the actor, they basically didn't tell people what was going on in that movie as well. And I mean, I can't imagine what that was like to go through on the set. You kind of take this job, you're getting paid. And I mean, especially today with our standards, you expect a certain amount of safety on a job. And even though these guys are actors and kind of, are in a different industry than a lot of us, you'd still think that they would expect the same thing. But as I was saying, though, Shelley Duvall in The Shining, from what I understand, she was absolutely scared shitless and needed therapy and stopped acting for a while. And, I'm talking about The Shining right now, but I mean, the same thing applies to this movie. A lot of these directors, like Kubrick, Diodato, he just, I guess he had his baby and he didn't care who he hurt or who he abused to make it the way that he wanted to make it. And that's a damn shame. There have been 6 unofficial sequels to Cannibal Holocaust. The Green Inferno in 1988 was the first movie to call itself Cannibal Holocaust 2. Sorry. I am so sorry. Cannibal Holocaust 2 in Italy, Turkey, and in the UK. Other movies that tried to incorporate themselves with Cannibal Holocaust were Amazonia, Catherine Miles story, which also had Cannibal Holocaust 2 as an alternate title. Mangiati Vivi, 1980, Cannibal Holocaust 2 on Argentinian DVD. Mondo Cannibal, 2003, known as Cannibal Holocaust 2, The Beginning in Japan. And Nella Terra Dia Cannibali, 2003, also known as Cannibal Holocaust 3, Cannibal vs. Commando in Japan. If all these movies were considered actual sequels, Cannibal Holocaust would have 4 part 2s in its series. So I guess everybody wanted to jump on that train, and I think really probably it was because they knew that they would get a good amount of attention, being that Cannibal Holocaust was so raw and got so much attention. Having that kind of cult following, I could see somebody jumping on the wings of that. Much like they do today, it seems to me like a lot of people really try to make these low budget sequels, and they try to remake movies and reboot movies, and sometimes those movies are made by you know lesser directors, and they're really B films, and the budget isn't there, and I feel like they're just trying to ride that wave, and a lot of times they're unsuccessful, and I think a lot of these movies were unsuccessful as well, probably low budget and didn't make much from it either, if any kind of profit at all. So, okay, I do have this note here. Second part of Ruggero Deodato's Cannibal trilogy, also including Ultima Mondo Cannibal, 1977, and Inferno and Diaretta, 1985. So I guess that is the Cannibal trilogy. I've never heard of the other two, and I've never really heard anybody talk about the other two, so I'd imagine they're probably even hard to find because I've just never came across that before. However, the Green Inferno, recently made by Eli Roth, would fit into that same category. It was a very well done film, and we had mentioned that in the Mother episode of Cannibalism. I would definitely check out Green Inferno. It doesn't have all this kind of background bullshit, that Cannibal Holocaust did. They weren't killing animals and hurting people and shit. So if you want to watch a movie like this, and you want a really good one, a really high quality one, a really well directed, well acted one, watch Green Inferno. Eli Roth's Green Inferno. It's not that old of a film, and it's really a great film. I enjoyed it. 10 days after its release, the movie grossed approximately $1.9 million, February 1980, what would be about $5 million today. Before the film was seized by the courts and Deodato arrested because of its infamy and several subsequent re-releases, it is claimed that the film has grossed $200 million worldwide, inflation not adjusted. So that's a good amount of money, though this has never been verified. So I'm assuming that's worldwide, and I'm assuming probably 90% of that's from Japan, because that just seems to be where these things are popular. I know a lot of the shit that we really are like, what the fuck, is usually very popular in Japan. Got Cannibal Holocaust here, and I know Human Centipede is one of those as well. Despite his character's behavior during filming, Perry Perkinan cried after filming the infamous turtle scene. That turtle scene was intense. When I was watching that movie, I mean, it was very obvious that was a real turtle, and they were pulling its insides out. And it was just, I don't know, the actors were making crazy faces and looked like they were really into it. It was kind of hard to watch. I'm going to be honest. Out of everything in that movie, that was the most hard thing to watch. I can understand why somebody would be crying afterwards. The actress used in the scene, which the professor bathes naked in a river, were hired from a local brothel. So there's a scene where the professor is swimming naked, and all these girls come out and start like tapping his penis and stuff with their hands. I don't really know. They're being playful and flirtatious, I guess. Anyway, they were whores. The actress in the adulterous punishment was actually the head of wardrobe, Lucia Costantini. Apparently, the production team was unable to find any local women to agree to be in the scene, so she was completely covered in mud to give the appearance that she was a native. So they had a scene where one of the tribesmen brought this woman out, and he basically, I guess it was a punishment for her being unfaithful, he pretty much sexually assaulted her with this object on his penis, and pretty much, ended up killing her. So they didn't have any tribeswomen to use for that. So they used the head of wardrobe, who was a white woman. They covered her in mud. And I got to be honest with you, I was really thrown off by that, because it was very obvious to me that she was a white woman. And when I saw the scene, it really didn't make much sense to me, because I was like, why is this random white woman out here, but they didn't address that, obviously, because they were trying to pass her off as a tribeswoman. But it just really didn't work. And if you watch the movie, you'll see what I'm saying. Like, it just, I don't know, to me, I was like, is that one of the women that was out there that ended up lost, or what's going on there? Because I didn't understand. So those are a lot of the details that come with Cannibal Holocaust. And there's probably just so much more, but this is a lot of the stuff that I found was most interesting and I took notes of and I wanted to share with you. The movie, like I said, with the movie, the point of this movie is who is the real monster. And I understood that watching it, and I think I understand very well where Deodato was coming from in the making of this movie. I think I completely understand his vision and what he was trying to accomplish. But I've got to be honest with you, I really don't know if it was worth it. I'm usually a huge supporter of art. I consider myself to be an artist myself, and I usually support and understand where a lot of artists are coming from and why it's necessary to maybe go so far sometimes to make your point. But in this case, I don't know if what everybody went through to make this movie was worth the point of the movie. And I think that the real monster in the end of all of this is not the tribes. It's not even the white people going to the tribes and going crazy and all this shit. I think the real monster here is fucking Ruggiero Deodato. I think he accomplished naming himself as who is the biggest monster out of this whole project. So I like I said before, I would really suggest Discretion if you are planning to watch this. I don't know if it's really worth it. I think a lot of people that are real film buffs and horror buffs would say, go ahead and watch it one time just to put it under your belt and put it on your resume. But if you have a weak stomach or, things like I've discussed here bother you, just don't. Just don't even bother. It's not worth it. And that's really all that I have about this one. I may have more to say later, but I think that right now that's kind of the background, the description of the film, and kind of my opinion on it. So, yeah, have a great morning, day, evening, whatever it is. Enjoy yourself. Enjoy your time. Kiss your loved ones. Tell people that you love them. And please follow us, comment, like. We are here on Spotify and YouTube. So if you're interested in seeing one or listening to the other, and you haven't, go ahead and do that. I appreciate all of you for your time, and have a wonderful whatever it is.